You played that wrong. That's what Drake allegedly told Kendrick Lamar in the newly leaked phone call, and it might change everything we thought we knew. This isn't just rap beef. It's lawsuits, manipulation, and maybe even a setup. What started as bars has spiraled into violence, legal warfare, and a war for credibility. And if this leak is real, then the whole feud might have been manufactured from the start. To understand how we got here, we have to rewind to August 2013, when Kendrick Lamar dropped what many called the most disruptive verse of the decade. On Big Sean's track Control, Kendrick didn't just name-drop his peers, he declared war. "I got love for you all, but I'm trying to murder you. Trying to make sure your core fans never heard of you." He didn't just come for underdogs, he went after Drake, J. Cole, Big Crit, Whale, A$AP Rocky, the entire top tier of hip-hop. The internet went into meltdown. Overnight, Kendrick went from respected lyricist to self-proclaimed King of New York while being from Compton. But here's what fans didn't know. According to claims now circulating online, Drake allegedly didn't take it as lightly as he said publicly. While in a Billboard interview 2 weeks later, he brushed off Kendrick's verse, saying, "It just sounded like an ambitious thought." The newly leaked call suggests a very different Drake behind closed doors. In that alleged phone call, Drake told Kendrick, "You played that wrong." That single line hints at something deeper, like there was an unspoken code, a chess game, and Kendrick had just made a reckless opening move. If that call is real, it paints Drake not as a calm, collected rival, but as someone trying to steer the narrative from the shadows. It also raises the question, was Kendrick's power move in Control really a misstep? Because what followed wasn't just back-and-forth verses, it was the start of a feud that never died. One that slowly evolved year by year into cold shoulders, subliminal bars, and now courtroom drama, threats, and gunfire. This wasn't just about dominance. It was about who controls the culture and who plays the game better behind the scenes. And what came next made everything look calculated.
For over a decade, fans thought the Kendrick versus Drake feud was just lyrical tension, competitive heat between two rap giants. But then came the leaked phone call. According to reports circulating online, the call allegedly dates back to right after Kendrick's Control verse dropped in 2013. On the recording, a voice said to be Drake's tells Kendrick, "You played that wrong." It's just 4 words, but those words hit like a missile. That's not a diss, that's a warning. That's someone telling you, you broke the rules. And in an industry as tightly controlled and ego-driven as hip-hop, that means everything. Fans who once believed Drake brushed it all off as ambitious now have a different image. Drake immediately picking up the phone, confronting Kendrick, not on wax, but behind closed doors. No diss track, no tweet, a direct, personal conversation. Why? Because Drake wasn't playing checkers, he was playing chess. To some, it looks like Drake was trying to contain the fire before it spread. To others, it sounds like he felt betrayed, like Kendrick violated some unspoken understanding between A-listers. And Kendrick? If the call happened, his response must have been silence, because he never addressed the rumor, never confirmed, never denied, just let the storm build. And that silence, it spoke volumes. The idea that Drake privately confronted Kendrick but kept the public calm makes him look calculated, strategic, and maybe even threatened. Was Kendrick's verse too much, too soon? Or did Drake just realize he'd been outmaneuvered in front of the entire culture? Either way, that call, if real, changed the tone of the entire feud, from friendly competition to Cold War tactics. And years later, as lawsuits, leaks, and threats pile up, that one quote keeps echoing. You played that wrong. But maybe Drake wasn't just talking about 2013. Maybe he was already thinking 10 years ahead. Because this feud didn't burn out, it evolved. And what happened next took things out of the studio and into the boardroom.
Just when fans thought this was only about bars and bruised egos, the curtain got pulled back. And what was behind it? corporate warfare. It started with a cryptic post from Drake in July 2025, claiming, "Now I got proof you called Lucian crying and used bots and payola to cover up the fact you got dog-walked." Lucian, referring to Lucian Grainge, the CEO of Universal Music Group. That's not a random name drop. That's the most powerful executive in music. And Drake wasn't just throwing shade. He was alleging Kendrick had help from the top. Let that sink in. If true, it means Kendrick didn't just win the culture. He had industry backing, bot farms, and streaming boosts tipping the scales in his favor. And that infamous leaked call might have been the moment Drake realized the game was rigged. Drake's legal filings from January and April 2025 took it even further. His lawsuit against UMG claimed the label used bots to inflate Kendrick's streams, especially for Not Like Us, reduced Spotify licensing fees to favor Kendrick's music, payola schemes to force airplay and bury Drake's tracks. And if you thought that was just online drama, think again. These were real allegations in court documents, backed by lawyers and discovery requests. But Kendrick never publicly addressed the bots, never confirmed or denied the Lucian Grainge story. Fans split into two camps, those who saw Kendrick as a victim of corporate puppeteering, and those who believed he was pulling the strings himself. Even more damning, Drake hinted that Kendrick cried to the label after things got intense. And in a culture built on bravado, that's devastating. True or not, the damage was done. Kendrick's image as a lone wolf lyricist was under fire. And Drake? He was no longer just battling an artist, he was battling an empire. But the beef wasn't just behind boardroom doors. It was about to spill into the streets.
What started as rap beef suddenly turned into real-world bloodshed. On May 7, 2024, just 3 days after Kendrick dropped Not Like Us, gunfire erupted outside Drake's Toronto mansion, a drive-by shooting. One of Drake's longtime security guards, who was also a close friend, was shot and seriously injured. This wasn't a coincidence, it was a message. According to Drake's lawsuit, armed men pulled up to his Bridle Path estate, shouted slurs and threats, then opened fire. Bullets tore through the front door. The guard was hit, bleeding out, while the crew waited 30 minutes for paramedics. The only thing keeping him alive? Towels and pressure. And it didn't stop there. The next night, May 8th, an intruder dug under Drake's security fence, crawled through, and began yelling racist threats before being detained. On May 9th, another security breach. 3 consecutive nights of escalating violence. Drake's legal team directly connected these attacks to the release and promotion of Not Like Us. Why? Because the song's cover art featured a satellite image of Drake's house, literally putting a target on his back. And the lyrics? They didn't just push buttons, they pulled triggers. Kendrick accused Drake of being a predator, rapping, "Say Drake, I hear you like them young. You better not ever go to cell block 1. Drake's team claimed that wasn't rap competition anymore. That was incitement. From subtle jabs to real gunfire, the beef had crossed a line. It wasn't about streams. It wasn't about lyrical dominance. It was about survival. This was no longer just about music. People were getting hurt. Security teams were on edge. Lawyers were filing emergency motions. And for Drake, every day felt like a target was on his head. But while the bullets flew, the threats started talking. And one man in particular, Top 5, was about to take things even darker.
Just when you thought the situation couldn't get more dangerous, Top 5 stepped in and lit a match. Top 5, real name Hassan Ali, isn't just another rapper from Toronto. He's got a history, legal trouble, street credibility, and according to rumors, a close link to Drake's inner circle. So when Top 5 started threatening Kendrick Lamar directly, people paid attention. In multiple live streams and interviews, he didn't just throw out vague warnings. He said things like, "If Kendrick touches Toronto, we turning him into Swiss cheese," We doing homework on him. He's not safe here. That's not entertainment. That's premeditated. That's street code. And law enforcement noticed. This wasn't just Top 5 playing tough for the internet. He'd already beaten a first-degree murder charge linked to a 2021 college student's death. He had credibility as someone who didn't just talk, he acted. Drake never publicly co-signed Top 5's threats, but rumors spread fast. People whispered that Drake had helped pay for Top 5's legal fees, solidifying their connection. Whether true or not, the perception was fuel on fire. Industry insiders began comparing the energy to the East Coast versus West Coast era. You know, the one that ended with Tupac and Biggie dead. Even veteran voices like Tony Ayo and 100 weighed in. They weren't just talking about lyrics anymore. They were warning that this was turning into a street war with national attention. And then, the law cracked down. On January 24th, 2025, Top 5 was arrested in Toronto. Multiple gun charges, unauthorized weapons, ammunition. The timing wasn't random. It came just weeks after his public threats toward Kendrick had gone viral. What did that tell fans? That the beef had now entered a law enforcement zone. This wasn't music. This wasn't trolling. This was a criminal investigation wrapped in album sales. And Kendrick? He wasn't backing down. In fact, his next move would take the fight directly into Drake's backyard.
With threats flying and violence already erupting, most artists would lie low, but not Kendrick Lamar. Instead, he made a bold, maybe reckless announcement. He was going on tour, and one of the stops, Drake's hometown, Toronto. Fans were stunned. This wasn't just another show. This was Kendrick marching into enemy territory, weeks after being threatened by a man with a violent track record, in a city where tensions were peaking. The tour was a joint venture with SZA, and the Toronto stop was locked in for June 12th at Rogers Centre, Drake's backyard, both geographically and symbolically. Was it courage? Was it a calculated challenge? Or was Kendrick playing a dangerous game? Industry insiders were split. Some saw it as Kendrick calling the bluff, showing he couldn't be silenced. Others warned it could escalate into a full-blown security nightmare. The biggest question was, would Kendrick actually perform Not Like Us, the diss track aimed squarely at Drake, in Toronto? The crowd didn't have to wait long. When Kendrick stepped onto that stage and dropped Not Like Us, the arena exploded. Fans rapped every word, echoing accusations that had led lawsuits and real violence. It wasn't just a performance, it was a statement. This wasn't about music anymore. This was psychological warfare. Kendrick was showing the world and Drake that he would not be intimidated, that he could show up in Drake's own city, say what he wanted, and walk off untouched. But it was also risky. One wrong move, one overheated fan, one misstep in security, and the feud could have taken a fatal turn. Even Toronto media began questioning who really controls the city. Because if Kendrick could come in, diss Drake on stage, and leave unscathed, maybe this war wasn't as one-sided as it once seemed. But what if Kendrick wasn't the one in charge? What if he was being used by forces much bigger than him? That's when the story shifts from beef to corporate chessboard.
Behind every diss track, every tour stop, every headline, there's a shadow war most fans never see. And according to Drake, this wasn't just rap beef. It was a rigged game. In his lawsuits filed in early 2025, Drake claimed Universal Music Group, the label both he and Kendrick were signed to, had been stacking the deck. And not just favoring Kendrick, weaponizing him. The accusations were explosive. bots were allegedly used to flood streams of Not Like Us, giving the illusion of unstoppable popularity. Spotify licensing rates were secretly reduced for Kendrick's tracks to push him higher in the algorithm. Payola schemes were employed, the old-school tactic of paying for radio play, now repackaged for the digital age. But here's the most disturbing part. Drake's legal team argued that UMG orchestrated the feud to boost profits. Two of their biggest artists pitted against each other, fans picking sides, social media erupting, and streams through the roof. If true, Kendrick may not have been the puppet master. He may have been the puppet. Was his aggressive rollout of Not Like Us timed with UMG's marketing blitz? Was the Toronto tour a calculated risk to provoke headlines and generate heat? And that satellite image of Drake's mansion used as Not Like Us cover art, was that Kendrick's idea? Or was it approved by executives knowing it would escalate the beef beyond music? Industry veterans like 50 Cent weighed in, saying labels often don't see artists as people, just content machines. He said, they're making money on both sides. They're not personalizing it, they're just selling music. And if Kendrick was being boosted by artificial means, what does that say about his Grammys, his dominance, his so-called victory? Because if the numbers were fake, if the charts were manipulated, then Not Like Us might not have been a win for Kendrick. It might have been a victory for corporate deception. But this manipulation didn't just shape careers, it put lives at risk.
When music turns to warfare, someone always pays the price, and it's rarely the corporations pulling the strings. While UMG denied all of Drake's allegations, the timeline tells a story that's hard to ignore. Not Like Us drops. Drake's house gets shot at. Kendrick's name is screamed in live threats. Top 5 is arrested after threatening to turn Kendrick into Swiss cheese, all while streams soar and headlines multiply. This wasn't just beef anymore. It was psychological warfare for the artists and for the fans caught in the crossfire. Drake, once the seemingly untouchable star, found himself living under lockdown. In interviews, he talked about his daily life revolving around his son Adonis, just trying to keep things normal. If it's Monday to Thursday, I'm just doing whatever Adonis wants. But outside, armed guards, bullet holes, lawsuits, anxiety. For Kendrick, the pressure was different, but just as real. If the leaked phone call about crying to Lucian Grainge is true, it may have been the moment he realized he wasn't just a rapper in a battle. He was a piece on someone else's chessboard. If it's false, it's still effective. Drake flipped the narrative, casting Kendrick as emotionally unstable and secretly manipulated. And the fans? Manipulated too. Millions of people took sides, posted, argued, defended, fighting a war that may have been manufactured for profit. Artists became brands, feuds became marketing, and fans, just clicks in a system. That's the cost of corporate control. Authenticity gets replaced by strategy. Lyrics become lawsuits, and emotional vulnerability weaponized. What started as who's the best rapper turned into who's being used and who's playing us all. Because if these allegations are true, then Not Like Us isn't just a diss track, it's evidence in a billion-dollar power struggle. And that leads to the final question no fan wants to ask, but can't ignore. Were we all just pawns?
When the dust finally settles, after the leaks, the lawsuits, the threats, and the bloodshed, we're left with a haunting question. Was this ever really about rap? Drake versus Kendrick was marketed as the ultimate lyrical clash, two giants battling for the throne.
But now, with the lawsuits laid bare and backstage politics exposed, we're seeing the darker truth. This wasn't just about bars. It was about control. Control of narratives, control of charts, control of perception. The leaked phone call, if real, didn't just reveal tension, it revealed strategy. And the idea that Kendrick may have been used by corporate machinery or that Drake is using legal warfare to rewrite the narrative turns what once looked like a cultural moment into something more sinister. We saw bullets fly, careers hang in the balance, and fans turned into foot soldiers for a fight they never fully understood. And through it all, streams soared, headlines rolled, and profits grew. If Drake's claims are true, this beef may have been manufactured, not to settle lyrical scores, but to drive engagement. Kendrick might not be the enemy, just the face of a corporate campaign. Or maybe Drake, feeling outplayed, is reshaping the story to paint himself as the victim of industry sabotage. Either way, the consequences were real. A man was shot, artists received death threats, police got involved, and fans, millions of them, cheered, defended, attacked, and consumed every second of it. What does that say about us? In the age of algorithm-driven culture, authenticity is harder to trust, and maybe that's the most dangerous part. Because when the lines blur between art and agenda, truth becomes entertainment, and manipulation becomes marketing. So, whether that call happened or not, whether Kendrick cried or not, whether the bots were real or not, the real question isn't who won the beef. It's who's been playing all of us this whole time.